This is the London Fintech Podcast, bringing you practical insights and approaches, stories and inspiration from the innovators who are building the new world of financial services. Welcome to London Fintech Podcast. In today's conversation, we're taking a departure from talking to company founders and CEOs to focus instead on a key location on the global fintech map. Alongside the headlines about the UK entrepreneur exodus to Dubai and the importance of London and Singapore fintech scene, Bahrain has been punching above its weight for some time as a fintech-friendly location. I'm delighted to be joined today by Dalal Buhejji, Executive Director of Financial Services at the Bahrain Economic Development Board. And Dalal is here to talk to us all about the region, what makes it special for fintechs, and how they line up alongside some of their larger neighbours in the whole fintech scene. So really been looking forward to this conversation. And Dalal, welcome. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you. No, good to be here. And thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I think there is a lot of great things that we can discuss and, looking forward to it.
Great. Well, as I was saying just before we started the recording, I do have an affection for Bahrain. Early in my consulting career, I think it was about 18 years ago, I was in Bahrain for 6 months with Accenture, putting in core banking systems for our banking corporation. And so it's a little bit distant memory, but really enjoyed the time there. I could see what was going on. The country was already feeling quite progressive, but I'm sure a lot has happened since.
No, absolutely. And just, that statement on itself just shows you how, we go way back when it comes to financial services as a sector in Bahrain. And I personally really always enjoy when someone comes and tells me, 18 years or 15 years ago, I was in Bahrain, doing something in the financial services landscape. And here we are today, still, discussing this very important sector that has really contributed, quite significantly to Bahrain's economy, but has really been transforming as well throughout the years. And you're right, a lot has changed since then, and a lot has been introduced into the market since then. And hopefully we can discuss a little bit more about that in our conversation today.
Yeah, let's get into it in a moment. Firstly, perhaps just tell us a bit about you, your role, and the role of the Economic Development Board.
No, absolutely. So I myself, I'm the executive director at the Bahrain Economic Development Board, looking after the financial services sector. As I mentioned, it is one of the key sector to our economy. What we do as a team is we support companies with their setup in Bahrain, but also supporting existing companies with their expansion within the kingdom. And we do that by working closely with the ecosystem, with the regulator, Central Bank of Bahrain, and the whole mandate of the Bahrain Economic Development Board, which is chaired by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince Prime Minister, is to grow Bahrain's private sector through FDI and DI into the economy. We obviously look after multiple sectors, financial services being one of them, but there's other key priority sectors that we look after, such as manufacturing, logistics, tourism, and technology, all that have really contributed significantly in Bahrain's diversification story and growth of economy. And so I've been at the EDB for about 15 years. So I come from a background of financial services, have worked in the investment banking space, and have really seen the transformation of the sector from, a traditional financial services sector to a really innovative, innovation, fintech-driven, and seeing the different kind of companies that came and set up in Bahrain, but also the existing local institutions, how they've transformed as traditional institution to more innovative and forward-thinking institutions. That's a very, very exciting sector, and it's really exciting to see what's also going to come in the future within the region as well.
Yeah, which I'm sure we're going to get into it, and
Yes.
lots of interesting things happening. So for those in the audience who perhaps are less familiar with Bahrain, clearly far less familiar than Dalal, and so some of whom probably on a level with me. It's been a while since I've been there, but sort of just let's talk about the region a little bit. So on the map, you've got UAE to the east, you've got Saudi to the west. You're an island state. I think you're about 1.5 million people. We might intuitively think it's all oil, but it's not all oil, is it? It's
Correct.
financial services and a bunch of other things now these days.
Absolutely. We are a small island nation. As you rightly said, we are actually the only island as part of the GCC, surrounded, as you rightly said, by our neighbors, Saudi, UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, and Oman, the other GCC countries. Bahrain, has a very interesting story when it comes to its diversification and growth of economy. So if you look at Bahrain's economy 20 years ago, the oil and gas has contributed significantly to Bahrain's economy. About 80% of our economy was from the oil and gas sector. We started this whole diversification and growth strategy quite early on by increasing the other sectors' contribution to the economy. So to date, the financial services is the largest contributor to our economy, followed by manufacturing and then oil and gas. So oil and gas is actually the third largest contributor to our economy. To date, the financial services sector is about 17% contributor to our economy, and we really are eager to see it further grow and develop. And what that means is, not the oil gas have shrunk in size, but more of the other sectors growing in economy. So if you look at the economy in terms of size, we were able to grow by fourfold in the last 20 years. So there has been a lot of growth in Bahrain's economy, which really shows the trust of investors in Bahrain's private sector. So we see financial institutions reinvesting or entering Bahrain's market and feeling, or trusting the market to enter the region from Bahrain. To date, Bahrain holds over 360 licensed financial institutions under a single regulator, Central Bank of Bahrain, that has really been progressive and forward thinking when it comes to adopting new regulations. And I have to say, in the last few years, we've seen a huge uptake when it comes to new companies setting up, whether it's in the digital app, the investment banking space, when it comes to robo advisory, open banking. So you're seeing a nice diversity of fintech companies setting up in Bahrain. So yeah, we've had a really great digital transformation in Bahrain's economy, and primarily we saw that quite heavily in the financial services space.
Yeah, those are quite big numbers. If I was asked to guess how many FIs there are in Bahrain, I wouldn't have said 360. I would
Yeah,
probably have said 50 or something.
absolutely.
So, and the single regulator, I think, is very much a thing for the location as well, because that really implies a real focus and simplicity. How would you characterize the region as a whole? So I mentioned, some of the larger neighbors, and I was talking to Money 2020 on this show a month ago and they had their first big conference in the region. I mean, it wasn't in Bahrain, but covering the regional scene, and they had a huge uptake. They said there were 30,000 people registered for that event. So just curious how you feel that Bahrain lines up alongside the broader region and the sort of growth curve, if you like, for what's going
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
more widely.
Absolutely. Of course. I mean, definitely. I think the region has really been progressing quite significantly when it comes to its vision towards financial services and fintech. And that actually has really supported the growth of all countries within the GCC. So, as I mentioned, I've been at the EDB for 15 years. And I have to say, the way we have conversation with companies has really changed in the last 15 years. In the past, it was always about why should a company set up in the MENA region or a GCC region. Now it's a no-brainer for financial institution and fintech companies to come in and set up. It's more of where should we start first, or what can Bahrain or Saudi or UAE can offer us in terms of our growth. So the story of why being in the region is no longer, a question, and more of we have to be here in the region because it's growing significantly and because it's the place where to be. I mean, the growth really shows there's a huge opportunity. So Bahrain has really positioned itself very favorably towards that story. We are a gateway to the region, utilizing Bahrain's progressive regulator, single regulator, which makes it so much easier when you're entering the market to get the right licenses from the regulator to access, a market that's worth more than $2 trillion in the market in the GCC region.
Yeah. So
That by itself is it shows you the magnitude of what you can benefit from the region. And we do work closely with our neighbors to ensure to see, what can we bring in terms of more innovation towards Bahrain. Now, I mean, to the region itself. Now, if you look at Bahrain, as a country, there's multiple aspects as well that a company looks after when they want to set up. And not only a single regulator is quite important, but also the structure of setting up. Within the financial services sector, you can 100% foreign own a company, which makes it much more flexible for companies to come and set up. The cost of doing business in Bahrain is much more cost effective. I mean, recently, E&Y have published a report called The Cost of Doing Business. Where it really showcases Bahrain on average could be up to 40% more cost effective than other countries in the region, the financial services space. And that's all the way from either, obtaining the right licenses, the talent pool, the salaries, leasing office spaces. And then you have the accessibility, obviously, to the market. I mean, obviously, physically, we're connected to Saudi Arabia via Causeway. But also when it comes to time zone, we're very strategically located in the middle of the world where you can easily access the East and West through the same day. You can obviously fly out to the wider MENA region within 3 hours, a 1 hour tops within the GCC, and then 7 hours to the wider European market. So the accessibility is really as well quite important, which makes it an easy access to the region.
So remind me, when we jumped on the call, and I don't have it top of mind, the time shift. What's the time difference to London?
It depends on the time of the year. So it's 2 to 3 hours, depending on the daylight saving.
I say good morning, and I think it's just your afternoon. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
But yeah, I mean, that's why you have, for instance, tech hubs and centers of excellences being able to set up in Bahrain, because they can easily, for instance, access markets such as Singapore or Hong Kong, and then all the way to New York, and be able to operate out of Bahrain under a single platform. So it works very well.
Before we jump right into today's episode, a quick thank you to our sponsor, NextWave. NextWave is an award-winning consultancy that is helping many of the world's leading banks, investment managers, and insurers deliver on their growth, efficiency, risk, and control goals and transform their businesses. With a senior team who have come from MD-level positions in major firms like HSBC, Barclays, and UBS, NextWave has both the deep industry expertise and the hands-on capabilities in AI, data, and automation to drive real results. More business outcomes and less PowerPoint from the consulting experience, as their clients like to say. NextWave has moved 2-week manual processes to 5-minute agentic automations, rescued global banking regulatory control programs, and digitized deal platforms, sustainability, and regulatory reporting systems. And they do much of this with hands-on engineering capabilities on leading technologies, which include ServiceNow, Alteryx, Quantexa, and Camunda. So if a modern and specialist alternative to the big brand consulting model sounds appealing, one which covers the full life cycle of strategy specialists and solutions, but with small practitioner teams, rapid delivery, and a better price point, then perhaps you should talk to NextWave. Visit nxwave.com to find out more and get in touch. That's nxwave.com. All right, let's get back to the episode. So we've talked a little bit about the region and some of the unique features of Bahrain. Let's just zoom in on Bahrain then a bit more. And I just really want to ask what makes the fintech scene in Bahrain so interesting. And perhaps you can give us a few examples.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the fintech scene is very interesting, exciting in Bahrain. So, as I mentioned, Bahrain has a very deep-rooted history when it comes to financial services. So, we celebrated 100 years of banking a few years back. It is the largest contributor, as I mentioned, to our economy, employing, 70% of the workforce are Bahraini, and one-third of that are women. Really, there is a lot of knowledge in the space. So, it was a natural transition to move, from a traditional financial services sector to adopting innovation and technology. And that all started back in 2017 when we actually launched our first onshore regulatory sandbox under the Central Bank of Bahrain. That allowed companies to come and test their solution in a very light touch regulation. It was easy for them to get on into the sandbox. They can graduate within a year span from the sandbox. And after that, the regulator will determine whether they need to be licensed or fall under an existing license that they have or create a new license. So that really supported the learning between both the innovator, the entrepreneur, but also the regulator. And it kind of fast tracked the learning curve for the regulator to be able to adopt and bring in new regulations into the market. And a good example of that is so we had Rain Financial, which is one of the crypto trading platforms that was part of the regulatory sandbox. It was the first to graduate from the sandbox. And right after that, the Central Bank of Bahrain was able to issue a full framework on digital assets and crypto assets. So we have to date 4 different categories when it comes to crypto, depending on the activities that you want to engage in. And we kept on growing that sector. So to date, we have over 8 licensed institutions ranging from crypto payments, crypto exchanges. We have as well a whole digital bank called SGB that supports the growth and banking of digital players in the markets. And recently as well, we've introduced a stablecoins regulation. And we're also have a tokenization platform that is part of the ecosystem. So not only were we able to bring in new regulations, but we kept on developing it. Similarly, as well, we had another company called Tarabot Gateway that's in the open banking space. Went into the sandbox, was able to graduate, and we created a whole open banking platform or open banking regulation under the Central Bank of Bahrain. So, and if you look at today's regulator, one of the things that they're also very keen on is not only to innovate externally in terms of being able to attract entrepreneurs and fintech companies, but also be innovative within the regulator itself.
Mm.
Subtech, for instance, is very important, and that really helps with when it comes to the supervision side of the regulator. So we're really seeing this transform quite significantly and quite quickly. And the reason why we've been also quite successful is that we love to learn from the private sector. In the end of the day, the entrepreneur itself are the ones that really understand how business operates, and they understand what makes sense for them on a regulatory perspective and how to become successful as a company.
Yeah.
So through the Central Bank of Bahrain, through the EDB, we do listen quite closely to the players in the market, and we try to get the best practices and benchmark ourselves against other global financial hubs, and be able to create the right regulatory framework for them. And we're not, shy from revamping these regulations. Just one point that I want to mention is that it's easy for us to revamp regulations. It's easy for us to change things up because we're small in size, which comes to our advantage. We are very nimble and fast, and we can act fast and be able to react to the market demands and needs because we are quite small in size, which is very, very attractive to fintech companies when they come and set up in Bahrain.
Yeah, I can see that focus and agility is really important. And you covered quite a lot. There's lots of examples of Bahrain being progressive. I think the one about the sandbox in 2017 is interesting. I don't know how that contrasts with sandboxes in the UK. I probably should know the answer, but it feels early. And you are, I think pushing forward with some of the pointy end of fintechs, crypto, payments, open banking. These are where a lot of the investment, where the focus is going. Curious, because earlier part of the conversation, you told me there's 360 financial institutions in Bahrain, which is a bigger number than certainly I was expecting. Are you finding that because of those local benefits of the labour market and the environment that you were talking about, that some of those firms are HQing out of Bahrain? I mean, I actually looked up Binance to see where HQ is, because they got their first GCC regional crypto license in Bahrain. I think that, again, that's another milestone for Bahrain. And I thought, I wonder whether they're HQ'd. And being decentralized finance, apparently they're not HQ'd anywhere. So
Yeah.
I probably should have guessed the answer there. So perhaps not the crypto companies, but just curious, have you got flagship HQs for some of these firms locally?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, when it comes to the 360, the reason why it's such a big number also because it's all under a single regulator, the Central Bank of Bahrain. So you have, the likes of the banking sector, the insurance companies, the payments, ancillary services, the digital assets. It's all under one single regulator. When it comes to headquarters, I mean, there are few that have decided, some that have decided to headquarter in Bahrain. Some decided to have their operational function in Bahrain. To us, what's important for us is how can we support the growth of companies within the region by utilizing Bahrain's regulatory framework and talent pool as well. And that's why we've seen tech hubs and centers of excellences as well emerging in the market, where not necessarily they would headquarter in Bahrain, but utilize the talent pool to create a sizable operation in Bahrain to utilize the local talent through the support of our labor fund as well, Tamkeen, that subsidizes the salaries of locals, Bahraini staff, subsidize the upskilling and reskilling of talent in these hubs. So a good example, for instance, Citibank have created a global tech hub in Bahrain, committed to recruiting 1,000 coders over the next 10 years. Tamkeen has really supported quite heavily when it comes to subsidizing the salaries of Bahrainis as well. JP Morgan as well have a smaller size center of excellence of 50 people, but can easily ramp up as well. As well created a center of excellence of 250 to be able to serve the global needs of that organization. So to us is when we speak to institutions, we like to highlight Bahrain's regulatory landscape, but also the talent pool that's available, which is very tech driven. So in the last couple of years, we've seen an increase of about, I'd say, 29% of enrollment within the STEM degrees in universities and the Polytechnic in Bahrain. 50% of that talent are women. So not only we're seeing an uptake in STEM degrees, but we're also seeing uptake as well diversity within the talent pool. So as you know, we're moving to a world where there's innovation and there's AI adoption everywhere, and you need to have that to be able to support the growth of companies globally. And that's one of the biggest kind of pain points when it comes to speaking to organizations. Is not necessarily where do we headquarter, but how can we leverage the existing landscape in a country to be able to grow within the region. And we want to make sure that we provide that to them.
Yeah. And that's how do I innovate at enterprise scale is a top topic with all the big institutions. Actually, when I was talking to Andrew McKibben from Bank of America, he runs the international tech teams. We spent quite a long time talking about federated innovation across Bank of America and how they do that. And you
Yeah,
mentioned a couple of firms there. These are the biggest banks in the world, right? So
course.
JP Morgan, Citi.
Yeah,
And they can go anywhere. They need to have global coverage. So I think it's testament to the environment and the support that Bahrain's providing that you've got firms like that is choosing to locate. I'm interested in the employment fund actually. So that sort of popped out of what you were talking about a minute ago. The support that Bahrain provides to big institutions to provide employment to local folks? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting model. I'm not sure if there's something similar to it in the region, but basically it's a labor fund where it pools fees that is taken from the private sector when it comes to employing expats, for instance, within organization. That pool goes into a fund that then reinvested back in the private sector. And how is it reinvested back in the private sector is through multiple avenues. A, through either human capital support or enterprise support. And when it comes to human capital, that's where it's very much on the local talent, the Bahraini talent, to make sure that they are fit for the requirements of companies, to be able to have the right skill sets when they recruit them. And that means A, subsidizing their salaries and, off the shelf, for instance, to date, if a fresh graduate is enrolled in an organization, Temkeen will subsidize 70% in year one, 50% in year two, and then 30% in year three of the salaries of those Bahrainis. Similarly, as well, they have an option as well of subsidizing, more of the experienced talent pool up to, 50%, for instance, in year one. Now, this is just off the shelf, obviously, and depending on how sizable is the organization is, we could look at it as well in a more bespoke manner as well from Temkeen. Similarly, as well, when it comes to the upskilling and reskilling, this whole space is transforming very rapidly. I was just speaking to one of my colleagues, and it's very hard to predict what the future skill sets are in the future. But what is important is that you need to create the right framework that you can adapt very quickly to be able to create and provide the right upskilling and reskilling needs to be able to be relevant in today's world. And that's where Temkeen could come in. And, we have different kind of organizations, the likes of Reboot, General Assembly, and the likes, where they create as well programs when it comes to full stack coding or coding, but also when it comes to Temkeen, they're happy to as well partner with any different academies in partnership or guidance with the organization to provide the right upskilling and reskilling. So they also look at enterprise support, obviously, depending on the business. They can obviously support in the hardware and software solution as well, and subsidizing that. So they do provide different support packages for organization. But that kind of also goes back to the fact that, we really are doubling down on our talent. We strongly believe in Bahrain's local human capital talent. That is, it shows through the numbers when you look at the private sector and where they are. And we want to make sure that when any company comes and set up, we have the availability of local talent, but also we're more than happy to bring in international talent and expat talent as well in the market as well. If you look at our population to date, 50% of our population are expats, and that really supports our growth as well, and supports the innovation within the market.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Temkeen is a very interesting model, and I really want maybe our listeners and viewers to maybe look into it and see the organization and what they've done, because they've invested quite heavily in Bahrain's growth. And Temkeen, their goal is to train like 50,000 Bahrainis in AI by 2030. I mean, it just shows you how much they're committed in generating the right talent pool in the market. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Temkeen. I really like what they're doing.
Clearly a big advocate.
Yeah.
For those listening, no shortage of skills in Bahrain, and a lot of support through the Labour Fund and the academic collaborations, and a very diverse talent pool as well. So all vital ingredients for a successful fintech scale out. Can we talk a little bit about location as well? So you are just the other side of the causeway from Saudi. You've got Dubai to the other side. How does that work to your advantage, and perhaps what's different about Bahrain versus some of the neighbours?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, location is very important, and I think we're blessed to be strategically located. As you rightly said, we are connected via causeway to Saudi, but also when it comes to connectivity by air, we're very, very strongly connected to the wider GCC region. Now, obviously, the biggest differentiator is obviously the size of both markets, or all the three markets, as you've mentioned. UAE and Saudi obviously are bigger in terms of size and bigger in terms of population. But when we have companies that do enter and set up in Bahrain, the whole goal is for them, how do they then expand and set up within Saudi and UAE? So we actually, love what the UAE and Saudi are doing when it comes to its adoption of technology, because in the end of the day, we are selling the region. The whole region is what's important to make any company a success. And looking at it individually as a country by itself is not sufficient enough for any fintech company to grow. Obviously, in terms of differences, and it all depends, obviously, in the end of the day, what is the goal and the business plan of a company. When we go and we speak to companies, we like to obviously showcase what Bahrain has to offer, but then ask them what is, asks, what are the challenges, that you're facing? What are you trying to achieve out of setting up in the region, and guide them in terms of what Bahrain can offer and what can the region as a whole offer. So, one of the differentiating factors is obviously having a single regulator. So we don't have the free zone kind of concept. So once you come and set up in Bahrain, you percent onshore in the market. You have obviously the 100% foreign ownership, and you have the different regulatory frameworks that are available in the market. That being said, as I mentioned, it's very important for us that the whole market is relevant to companies. So we strongly believe that the whole region is very complementary to each other. I don't know if for those who have been looking at the news year on year, the last couple of years, Bahrain as EDB, the Economic Development Board, we have been having a record years in terms of FDI across multiple sectors. And that goes to the fact that because the region is growing as a block. And to us, that's very, very important. And I know from a regulator side, like the Central Bank of Bahrain and other central banks, they meet quite regularly to ensure that they share the best practices and provide, the right regulatory frameworks for companies to be able to operate and expand within the region. But yeah, I mean, each country has its differences, but again, each country can address the different kind of asks a company has to offer. But one thing I have to also mention is that if you look at, for instance, Bahrain's vision when it comes to where we are to date, financial services is quite important. If you look at Saudi's Vision 2030, financial services is quite important. If you look at as well UAE's strategy when it comes to innovation, financial services. So the good news is that this sector is quite important in all of the GCC countries. And we're seeing that even hopefully widening up to the wider MENA region. So, I think we're just quite keen to see what new solutions and innovation comes into the market. And it's quite interesting how fast pace is the sector is and within the region.
Yeah. So regional opportunity that's only growing, and I like the positioning of Bahrain as an integral part, but also servicing and supporting the wider region. That's probably quite a good link to ask you about Gateway Gulf. I think Gateway Gulf
Yeah.
is a thing. It is a forum that's, if I'm right, run out of Bahrain. Really pretty much to power what we've just been talking about. Is that right?
Absolutely. So we just completed our third annual Gateway Golf event earlier in the week. It has been a great, successful platform. Over 200 global leaders have gathered, CEOs of companies, chairmen, ministers. And the theme is all about rethinking global investment for new trade dynamics. So it's a very, very interesting topic, and we had very meaningful conversations. But what also is very interesting about this platform is that it allowed for a lot of bilateral conversations, because it's, you have 200 hand-picked global leaders under one umbrella can really push for meaningful conversations and agreements. So we, through Gateway Gulf, 17 billion worth of new deals were announced through partnerships and announcements. So over 60 plus agreements across all sectors. But if you look at the financial services specifically, there has been 14 deals that has been announced, and that value totaled up to about 3.8 billion worth of agreements within the financial services sector. So it is a very important event for the Kingdom of Bahrain, a great successful event that we want to continue to bring in year on year, and really, facilitating very meaningful conversations. And it's a very eye-opening conversation where we have a lot of new people that have visited Bahrain, for instance, for the first time, and really opened their eyes on the opportunities that the whole market and the region has to offer. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes as well out of these conversations in terms of setting up in Bahrain, setting up in the region, where these investments go in. So I would say definitely watch the space, and see how these conversations go forward. But yeah, I mean, we really were able to secure a good number of announcements over the last couple days at the beginning of the week.
Yeah, we'll be really interested to see what comes to market on the back of that. And I'm sure the work happens all year, but
Oh,
to
for
bring
sure.
200 senior people together for a few days and be able to report that you've done 17 billion of business is I think, certainly feels to me like a fantastic result.
It's a definitely Team Bahrain approach. And that theme has been really showcased very loud and clear with the participants. We all work together, the different ministries. So we had a number of hosts that are basically across different ministers hosting different delegates. We be able to create all these announcements and agreements because of the Team Bahrain approach, but also when it comes to on the ground having these meetings, it was so easy to navigate through to the right people and the right audience, to be able to have these meaningful conversation. And it's a great example of how we work as one team. And again, it goes back to the fact that we're nimble and fast and quick, and we really are serious about the growth of our economy, but also of the growth of the private sector. And we're here to create the right framework in place to encourage entrepreneurship, to encourage innovation, but also create the right job opportunities in the market. I'm personally super excited and very optimistic about the future, to be honest. And I can see that very loud and clear through the conversations that I've heard over the last couple of days during Gateway Gulf.
That team Bahrain framing, I really like that. And it's not, but Gateway Golf's not the only event, the only focus that you're supporting. If I'm right,
Yes.
you also have a fintech forward conference. Is that
Correct.
more of an overt, fintech event? And that again was quite recent, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that was beginning of October. So a bit over a month ago, or exactly a month ago, we hosted FinTech Forward. It is a very fintech focused event, a bit larger in scale. So we had over 2,000 plus delegates that have RSVP'd, and attended over a span of 2 days, and multiple conversations, whether it's on the regulatory front, themes like tokenization, stable coins, digital assets, digital banking, by a number of announcements of new local companies setting up in the wealth management space, in the microfinancing space, where you have local, regional exhibitors as well. And again, a number of announcements in the fintech space. We actually welcome a sizable delegation from the UK as well. So DBT actually worked very closely with them, and they're great partners, to be honest, for us when it comes to the whole fintech journey. So over 70 delegates from the UK across 36 companies flew in to Bahrain and presented basically their offerings. We also have 2 different companies already set up out of the UK that also did some announcements during FinTech Forward. Omazi is one of them. The other one is Aman, which is powered by Themis out of the UK. Omazi is all about digital identity, and Aman powered by Themis is all about identifying financial crime, anti-money laundering. So it's a very, very interesting two platforms that came in. We also had a local homegrown company called Ajiyad, which is a Sharia compliant trading platform that is supported by a UK technology called Valexa. So we're seeing that partnership as well. And that was all showcased in FinTech Forward. So yeah, we do have obviously Gateway Gulf, which is encompassing all sectors of the economy. But we also have, different kind of events, whether it's on the cybersecurity, AI, or FinTech, such as the FinTech Forward event that happened
Yeah.
a month ago.
You literally covered my next question. I was about to, given that this is the London Fintech Podcast, I was going to have to ask you how Bahrain interacts with the UK, and I
Yeah.
had heard that you'd had a big delegation for the
It was
conference.
brilliant. It was brilliant. And, we have really a very great, strong relationship with the UK. I mean, it's a historical relationship. We're talking about 200 plus years of very strong bilateral relationship between both the Kingdom of Bahrain and the United Kingdom. And that goes all the way from a leadership level as well. But also when it comes to, our regulation, we always like to benchmark ourselves to what the UK has done. So we look at their regulation, what they have done. We benchmark, the best practices to make it easy for companies that are very familiar with the UK market and the regulatory framework in the UK market when they come and set up in Bahrain. But yeah, I mean, it has been quite exciting. I mean, so I'll tell you the whole history about the whole DBT relationship. Obviously, as I mentioned, we have very strong relationship with the UK government, and we actually partnered with DBT and we did like a small kind of event, a panel discussion in London in November of last year. That resulted in the two companies I mentioned, Aman and Umazi, to really open their eyes about Bahrain and set up in Bahrain. And it was, that kind of conversation that we had with DPT that we kept on the relationship going and the conversation going. I was like, oh, let's bring in a small group then to come and visit Bahrain for FinTech Forward and to get to learn about it. I was, we started with a couple, 2, 3, went up to 5, and then all of a sudden it grew to 36 companies. And we would love to welcome more companies next year. So we will definitely be continue to work with the UK on hosting different kind of missions from the UK in the fintech space and the financial services space to come visit Bahrain, and reciprocate the same thing as well, having Bahrain visit the UK, and just to carry that conversation and partnership going forward.
Yeah, so hopefully more frequent flyers in both directions based on that. It's great to hear how that started very small and then
Yeah.
sort of snowballed with the interest and the value on both sides for that collaboration. So let's look forward briefly. You've talked about trade deals that have been struck and growth in the region. So you've touched on some themes, but is there anything that you call out that's sort of what's coming next for Bahrain that we should all look out for?
So I think in Bahrain, it's all about how can we become very relevant when it comes to the different innovation that comes into the market. And I think we've been quite successful in being able to be very adaptive and quick in bringing in different kind of regulatory frameworks. I think common themes that you will see, digital banking. I think that's a space that I believe is going to be the future of the banking world, as you see more digital assets being in the market, but also in traditional other players in the market, you would need the whole digital banking aspect to come in, and that will be quite transformative. We strongly still believe that the whole talent pool and utilizing the local talent and human capital will be a theme that will continue. So having centers of excellences, tech hubs set up in the market, the whole wealth management space, as you probably know, and our viewers, I'm sure they've seen, there's has been a lot of movement of wealth recently. And Bahrain is an ideal place for family offices to come and set up. We have the right regulatory framework in place. So we really are going to see some positive movement in that space. It's already been picking up quite significantly in the region. And you've seen, really well-known family offices having setups in the region. And then the whole fintech space, whatever that means in a very fast-moving world.
Yeah.
I would love to say, digital assets and tokenization and stable coins, which, yes, they are going to be important. But I'm pretty sure in like 4 months or 6 months to date, there are going to be also other trends that we need to look forward to. So I want to keep it broad as fintech and innovation, and we want to capture as many as possible in Bahrain to be able to support the growth of those companies. It's going to remain to be very diversified and a very diverse sector, but very backed by innovation. I think that's the main theme across the financial services sector within Bahrain.
Yeah. I think we're going to see, inevitably going to see an ever increasing pace of innovation. So I'm curious to see what's coming next.
Yeah.
In the AI space itself, the pace is dizzying. I gather the models are sort of doubling their intelligence every 4 months or so. And it was only February this year when someone said, "Hey, we're doing this thing called vibe coding." And then I saw
Yeah.
something this week that said that vibe coding is now dead. And
Okay.
and, and enterprise developers don't like all the code slop that's been created. There are some constants through all of this, and it's going to be the environment, it's going to be the talent supply. The people are still fundamentally a huge part of the equation, despite the automation that's happening around us. So I think those foundations you've been talking about in terms of the regulation and the talent and the practical conditions for supporting growing companies are really important.
Absolutely. And it's fine that things are changing. We just need to be, adaptive and agile. And I think that's what Bahrain is really good at. We need to accept the fact that this is a very transformative sector and sectors with the adoption of AI, as you rightly said. Things are changing very fast. So we just need to be very flexible and agile and listen to the market. The entrepreneurs that are actually creating these technologies guide us, and we create the right space for them to innovate. So yeah, it's very exciting.
Very good. Okay, so look, we could talk longer, but we don't have much longer. So we'll wrap this up. We covered a lot there. Fascinating conversation. So for anyone who didn't really know much about the region or is considering the region, and in Bahrain in particular, this conversation, I think, should give you all the coordinates you need to think about the environment for innovation, perhaps creating a tech hub and all the support that you can get. And you know who to call as well,
Absolutely.
which
Yeah.
is Dalal. So if folks want to know more and find out more about you and Bahrain particularly, where do they go?
So you can definitely reach out to us at the Economic Development Board, or just visit our website. We're going to support you and guide you. So you can definitely put your inquiry in there. Reach out to us, even if it's non-financial services. As I mentioned, we do look after multiple sectors, but we'll be more than happy to support and guide you. So I know it's a bit overwhelming when you enter to a new market. You don't know where to go to. And that's the role of us at the EDB, where we will handhold you throughout the process. When, you're at the early stage of trying to understand, what Bahrain can offer and what the region can offer, all the way to your registration, your setup, but also after that, when you're fully set up, how can we support your growth? So feel free to reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to support you.
Well, there you go. For aspiring fintechs and enterprises who are considering the location, there's an offer there, white glove treatment to help you understand and establish in Bahrain. Dalal's quite active on LinkedIn. They got quite a following, very easy to find, a very welcoming message, I think, throughout this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yes, please feel free to drop me a message.
Thanks so much. Well, thanks for your time and just really sharing all your insights. And I really enjoyed the conversation.
No, thank you, Tony. I really enjoyed it myself as well. So thank you so much.